So my whole office is kind of weird. So I base my office around like the the kind of older like pen and paper guys, basically, who would write on couches and stuff like that. So my whole setup here is I've got this vertical screen. I I've got this digital piano set up with a music stand that's big enough for score paper. And I built this. So this is totally custom, which was super fun. And then I've got this. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then I've
Uh,
got this setup here, which is yeah, you. And this is like my main writing setup here, which is just it's a little C desk so that I can literally lay down on the couch and and write. Um, And so yeah, it's a slightly different setup than I would consider normal, especially I mean everybody's got these big like spaceship type setup which I'm not criticizing at all. I think they're really cool. But it doesn't work for me at all because like I I want to feel like I have the freedom to create. I don't want to feel like I'm forcing myself to create. And so basically, like I've got a setup here. Everything's on wheels in here. And so basically I have this setup where if I'm recording like a pop track, then I just move things around real quick, and that's the way that I have things set up for that day. Or if I'm programming is really hard work. And it just really sucks to be like hunched over a studio desk for 8 hours and just like programming. So I'll just hop onto my couch and literally lay down for like a good chunk of time, and just like program with my with my tiny little keyboard.
yeah.
So, I really like it. It's a fun little setup.
Yeah, that's all that you need basically.
It
Like
it totally is.
for composing bigger things, the big piano is like awesome, right? And then
Oh, sure.
if you're just really drawing the notes into the DAW, then with the MIDI it's amazing.
Yeah, totally. A lot of times I'm just drawing it in, but also this piano right here is connected to my DAW as well.
Oh, okay, that's
And
very
so yeah,
practical.
this guy right here is connected to the DAW, and then I use instead of like a funky like MIDI CC setup, I actually use a trackpad, and I use a software called Audio Swift, and so I actually use this as my MIDI CCs. And so I have multiple faders set up on the trackpad. And so I
Oh.
can like move this around and put this over here on my desk, and then I can use that as my fader while I play. And so yeah, it's a weird setup, but it's typical me, like trying to find a completely new way of doing things.
Yeah, you gotta know what works for you. Like
Oh, totally,
that's the
totally.
most important thing. In the end of the day, you're the one who creates, so that you gotta be comfortable while
Well,
you do it, right?
there's a saying that I slightly disagree with, which is like the members of the orchestra, they play instruments. The composer plays the orchestra. I slightly disagree with that. I think the conductor plays the orchestra. I think the composer plays themselves. And so basically, as the composer, you're tasking yourself with creating the music,
Yeah.
right? So the orchestra, obviously they have to play it, but it has to come from somewhere. And um, I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying something like this, but John Williams isn't incredible because of the orchestra, although it is obviously a synergistic relationship that is very, very important. I'm not denying that whatsoever. But he's incredible because he's done that thought work, and he's gotten to that place in his mind where he understands these things so well, whether it's orchestration, or harmonic techniques, or whatever he's using. he's able to, I mean, he's playing himself. And that sounds a
Yeah.
little weird to say, but
No,
but
but I get it.
himself is the instrument. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like you also, if you have so many techniques, so many things that you can do, then you are the one to decide what things that you really pick. What do I
Yes.
want to use now? What do I want to hear? What do I want to create? And it's you that's creating. So, and because you have everything, you can do everything. I said it before, in music, you can do anything. You
Yeah.
have a white canvas. It's like drawing, whether you put
Totally.
a red dot there or a black dot or a green one, and the colors, like the music, you can make any sound you want.
Yeah.
So what exactly you do is up to you, and then because it's up to you, you're playing yourself. So I get it.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
I
Totally. I
agree.
mean, and I think that in the same way that a guitarist or like an oboe player, a violist is like choosing when to have the flourishes of vibrato and things like this. It's like you're doing the exact same thing as a composer.
Yeah.
But you're doing it with your brain. And then you have to write it down so that it can be replicated.
Yeah,
And
so
so
true.
like yeah, absolutely. So I'm Blair, and I've composed. I actually haven't been composing for that long. I've probably composed since I was like my in my mid-20s, but I've been a musician for a very long time, and I guess you could say I've composed since I was like 10 or 12 if you include songwriting, which I mean most people would. So I've played music forever, basically. I've played piano since I was like 4 years old or something like that. My mom majored in voice at the University of Washington, and so music has always been a huge part of our family. And I just think that I never thought that being a composer was really an option. And around my mid 20s, I was just like, I'm really unhappy in life. And so I basically decided to apply late for the late deadline at Berkeley Valencia. And I got in. I was like one or two spots left, and I got in. And I was very, very excited about that. And so it's been uh, I've been very fortunate since then. I've gotten to work on projects like Apex Legends. I wrote the Teen Titans theme for the game Multiverses, which is Warner Brothers' new game. Wrote a bunch of music for a game called Watch Dogs. I did guitars on Mortal Kombat. Um, and I've been getting to do a ton of stuff. I'm positive there's things I'm forgetting. But I've been getting to do a ton of stuff, and I've been very fortunate. In kind of starting my career. And so I've been doing this now for probably in the realm of 5 to 7 years or something like that. Um, and and it's been a great time. I mean, obviously, like composing is crazy. It's a crazy field of work, but I really, really like it. Um, and let's see, hobbies. Do I have any hobbies? I mean, my hobbies in typical Blair fashion, like I don't have any hobbies that I haven't found a way to turn into my life. Like
Yeah.
into my work and my career and my, like my pursuit. Like um one of the reasons we were talking about having my office set up the way that it's set up, which is kind of funky and weird, is like my this TV is on a swivel right here, and I'll literally just sit on my couch and watch movies and TV throughout the workday. Um, and I make it a goal to try and watch at least a couple movies a week, if not a movie a day, plus like a bunch of TV. And movies, like I love music. Music is my job. Movies are my passion. And I think that I come to being a composer uh, from a slightly different perspective in that regard. I think a lot of composers come to making film music from asking the question, how do I how do I work on music? How do I do music for my life, right? And then the way that they figure out how to do that is, oh yeah, I could be a media composer, I could be a film composer, commercials, I could do library music, I could do video game music. Everybody kind of tends to settle on one thing. For me, it was a little bit of the opposite. It was more along the lines of how do I work in film? And then I was like, well, hey, I'm really good at music. So and so that's kind of been my into working on this thing that I love so much, which is movies. And
That's
so yeah,
amazing.
I definitely come to it from a slightly different perspective than a lot of people do.
Yeah, most definitely. Would
Yeah.
you also be like, if someone asked you, hey, um, can you make music for our movie, but I cannot pay you, but if you want, you can play in the movie. Would you accept that?
Um, but
If it's a bigger
it
production, let's say
totally
Netflix
depends.
movie.
Honestly, if you're talking about a feature-length film and they're wanting 60 minutes of music, the
Oh,
answer is almost always going to be no.
yeah.
That being said, there's a little rule that independent contractors basically should live by, which is good money, good people, good project. It needs to have at least two, right?
Mhm.
So if it's a good project with good people, there have been times where, like I almost got a short film once with some people who I really liked, and Amanda Seyfried was the star. I don't know if you can picture her in your head. Um, she was in Les Mis, and like it was a great group of people. It seemed like they didn't really have a huge budget. I mean, Amanda Seyfried is the star, and they didn't have a huge budget, but it's like they didn't have a huge budget, and I was like, you know what? Like this seems super fun. They seem like a great group of people, and I thought, I'll accept it if they say they don't really have anything, or if it's like, hey, we've only got a couple $100 or something like that. And it was a short film. It would have been like 2 minutes of music or something like that. I would have worked on it for less than a week, and I would have been super happy. Good.
Yeah.
It's good people and a good project, right? And so, but for the most part. I've been incredibly fortunate in my professional career. I've worked a bunch with a guy named Stephen Barton, who he and Gordy Hobb just won the Grammy last year or earlier this year for Jedi Survivor, Star Wars
Oh,
Jedi Survivor. And Steven's just like a great guy, a really great guy. And he's paid me well, and he is who I have worked on games like Apex Legends, Watch Dogs Legion. He was my contact with Multiverses. Um, and and so I've been very fortunate in the sense that I've gotten to meet a few great people in my career where I've had good money, good people, and good projects, and that's why I say I'm lucky, um, is because most of the time it's a grind for 20 years. And don't get me wrong, I mean I still grind. Like I'm still working on making a full-time income and living from composing, but it's getting better and better and better, and it'll only get better with time. And I've already had some incredibly beneficial and just fortunate, successes.
yeah, most definitely.
Hmm.
What I also saw on your YouTube channel was that you made music for the Penny series from yeah.
Yes. I knew I was forgetting something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first thing that popped into my mind when you said, I'm probably forgetting something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so good music. I just
Oh.
listened to Out of the Blue.
Oh.
I just listened to it and was like, wow, I think I'm gonna like save it in my music playlist because
Oh,
it's
that's so sweet.
it's
Uh,
amazing. Yeah.
Honestly, that one piece of music has a really special place in my heart. I don't know what it was about that day or that piece of music, but just every once in a while you write something that like I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan or whatever, but like like you accidentally make a Horcrux, like you accidentally put a little piece of your soul in it.
Oh yeah,
And like out of the blue, that particular arrangement, that's totally how I feel about it. Is like, oh man, I don't know what it was about that day, but I just put a little piece of my soul into that one.
that's amazing. It turned out so great.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. How did it actually happen that that Ryan came to you and asked you to make the music? How did this happen?
That's such a good question. Okay, so about 3 to 5 years ago, I was working with this guy Stephen Barton, um,
Hmm.
who I still work with on and off to this day. Uh, and I was having a great time, but it was becoming apparent to me that it's like, oh man, even though I'm having a great time working with Steven, this is not going to be my entire life. Like doing work for Steven is not going to be everything that I ever do. So
As
I need
a
to figure out,
sorry, as an
oh,
additional composer.
as an additional composer,
Hmm.
exactly.
All
And
right.
Steven is great about, passing off opportunities. And there have been projects that I've been the lead composer on because Steven has been like, "Hey Blair, do you want this?" So it's in no way a reflection of the way that he's treated me or anything, but it's just like, at a certain point you have to go kind of find your own stuff to do, regardless of what situation you're in. And and so I was in this situation and I decided to do this big kind of cold email campaign, um, where where I would, for an hour a day, I would watch short films on YouTube and
Ooh,
just
okay.
find good short films on YouTube. And then I would find the ones that I liked. So I would not reach out if I didn't like it. Like if something did not make me feel something in the films, I wouldn't reach out. So I'm not just like shotgunning everybody and asking for, like, would you let me be your composer? Would you let me be your composer? It was more just like I was looking for genuine um,
Good projects.
contacts. Yeah, like people who I admired, people who I thought were doing cool and awesome work. And one of these films, oh man, I just want to make sure I get the name right, but I'm not going to. I think it was called Feed the Light. Um, oh, that's not the right name, but it was from this filmmaker named Isaac Carlton. And he's got a great YouTube channel now. You can totally check it out where he does all these really interesting challenges. Like he filmed a short film on an airplane as it was going. Like so he does all this cool stuff. And he had developed this little film, this short film that I had watched that was like this guy was stuck in this little time travel loop of like it was like 2 or 3 minutes, this whole loop. And I just thought it was really engaging and charming, And so I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, uh, I I loved this. I'm a composer. Uh, I'd love to work on a project with you in the future." Basically that kind of thing. I just let him know how much I loved the film, and that I would love to collaborate in the future if there's ever an opportunity. If not, no worries. Um, so it definitely wasn't like a hard sell or anything. It was just like, hey, I really think your stuff is awesome. Um, he ended up getting back to me almost immediately, and he was working on another short film, and you can watch this one on his YouTube channel. It's called The Barber Shop. And it's about this guy who's got very long hair, who goes into the barber shop to get his hair cut like about an inch or two, and then but the barber like literally like buzzes it off instead, and so they end up having like this hilarious like kung fu battle. And so it's like it's very I don't know, like over the top, but in a really, really fun way. And um and so he asked me to write the music for it, and the music is like big fight music, right? Like James Bond or like dueling like dueling pistols, like those kinds of things, like just big fight scene music.
Yeah.
Um and that was great. I did it. He loved it. I loved it. We had a great time. And then we just didn't talk for like 2 years. And then all of the sudden, um, last May, I got a message from Isaac, and he's like, "Hey, I'm working with a YouTuber right now, uh, who who needs a composer for a project. Um, and I suggested your name. Would you be interested?" and I said, yeah, no, totally, I'm interested. I don't know what your budget is or anything, but yeah, let's chat. And so basically, I ended up hopping on a Zoom call, and it was Ryan Trahan, and it's like, oh, okay. And so
Surprise.
it's like the mini Mr. Beast. And it's like,
Yeah.
like, and it's like, okay, like this is awesome. And and so it ended up, I mean, it was just kind of one of those things where like a little contact led to a little contact led to a little contact. Um, where I just did some work and somebody liked it, and I ended up doing some work for Ryan, and he's a super sweetheart guy, and we worked really well together, and and yeah, so I mean it ended up working out so super well, and it I mean that was one of those things too where it was like I think every piece of music on the project except for one was accepted on version one. I think I did five, I did five tracks, all except for one were accepted on version one, and the fifth one
Wow.
that wasn't was like this opening starting piece of music that he's like I want something really inspirational, and then I wrote something really inspirational, and then he's like after I wrote it I sent it to him, and he's like, you know what, I changed my mind, I want it to sound like the Joker. And so it's kind of one of those things that it's like, well, I don't take too much responsibility for that one. I don't think I could have hit Joker while also aiming for inspirational. So it's like it just ended up working out really well, Ryan was just a sweetheart guy, and the project just like we recorded with real orchestra and everything went
Oh,
so
amazing.
smoothly. Yeah, and so it was just a great project. I mean, it was a really fun one as far as like things that I can point to and be like, "Woo, that was awesome." That's definitely one of them.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I it was last year, but I think the original Penny series is now 2 years old. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
But so he did a redo, right? Do you know what kind
Yes.
of what it was?
Yeah, so it's like a it's so he called it the Penny series movie. And
Hmm.
so basically it's the entire Penny series edited down into a is it a 3 or 4 hour kind of time slot basically? So it's an abridged version of the whole Penny series, which I believe if you were to watch it all in one go, like all of the individual episodes, I think it's like 21 hours of material or something like that.
Yeah,
It's like it's huge. It's so much. Um, and so they've condensed it down and turned it into what they call the Penny series movie, and so yeah, I guess I'm the composer of the Penny series movie. In reality, what I did, oh thank you, in reality what I did is I wrote about 4 or 5 tracks for them, and I gave them stems and whatnot that they can edit throughout the picture, and they can use different things in certain areas, or like Out of the Blue, we were just talking about that track, like if there's a super hyper emotional moment or something, that's obviously a track that they can edit in for that. And yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it just ended up being a super fun time.
yeah, amazing. I think I'll actually share my screen real quick to because what would a musician's podcast be without music? So I'll play it real quick.
Oh, great. That was a fun one.
So amazing. I really love it. Like I already know that for the next couple of days I will just listen on to it again and
Oh.
again and again. You know, I love how big you made the orchestra. It was like really the emotion that you
Mm.
conveyed in the piece was just amazing. Like I'd
Oh.
love to see it in the DAW if you have it in a DAW, or did you
Yeah.
record it? You recorded some things with a live orchestra, right?
Yes.
Oh,
So that was that what you heard on the recording there, it's half mock-up and half the Budapest Art Orchestra, which is it's East Connection Orchestra in Budapest. And so it's the same group who did like Jordan Peele's Get Out,
mhm.
if you're familiar with that movie. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, fantastic movie. And so yeah, they did fantastic. I five like I said, we did 5 tracks on the EP, um, or for the project, however you want to say it, and 3 of those tracks have live orchestra, and 2 are completely mock-up.
Hmm.
And so we took an hour with the orchestra, which is I can't remember exactly. I think we were in like the $2,000 to $3,000 range, um, to record with the full orchestra. I think we just did strings and brass. Um, Unfortunately, no woodwinds. We were gonna do woodwinds, but I mean, the reality is that in a mix that busy, and it is a very busy mix, um, the woodwinds just get so lost, and
Yeah.
so the extra $300 or $400, and I hate to say it, I hate to say it, but the extra $300 or $400 just would not ultimately be reflected in the recording, for having the live woodwinds, especially like in that piece. What you've got is like some, it's not really like if I had some solos, absolutely 100%. Um, and so yeah, so like I said, it's the Budapest Art Orchestra, and they really did a great job. We did 3 pieces. Each piece was about 2 to 3 minutes long, and we recorded all that in an hour. And so
Wow.
and then it was just a process of getting all the takes that I wanted and comping those together in Pro Tools, and then I mixed the live session in Pro Tools, and then I brought that into my DAW, and I combined that with my excuse me, with my mock-up, and then I did a mix of the entire thing. It'll take me a second to open up,
Yeah.
and I think I've done a little work to my template since then, so I hope it opens up all perfectly and everything. I can't remember if I did this before I switched to my new computer or not. But let me go ahead and open this up.
Do you
And
work with Cubase or is it Logic? Because like I think Cubase and Logic they look so similar, and I don't know. I have
yeah,
trouble differentiating which one
I
is which.
I work with Logic, and I really love it. Um, Logic, in my opinion, is probably the most underrated DAW, or it's maybe the most crapped upon DAW in the sense
Really?
that I think, yeah, I mean, just in the sense that like people, the opinions that I tend to hear about Logic from those who are critical about it, seems to be, yeah, it looks nice, but it's not very powerful. It's not very powerful for editing MIDI. It's not very powerful for, I mean, just a lot of different things. Um, Really, most of those people haven't spent a lot of time with it, and so I'll take you under the hood just a little bit, in some of this stuff and show you. Um, I mean, my Logic template is kind of infamously very powerful, um, and so it's opening up right now. It's a fully loaded session. Uh, can take just a minute to open up. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
my dog just came in. Hey, Pop.
that's so sweet. Do you have what kind of pets do you have? Do you also have cats or just one dog, two
A
dogs?
dog, and one cat as well.
Sweet. And I have double.
Oh, do you have two dogs and two cats?
Yeah, that's
Nice.
amazing. And they also get along.
They don't get along. Well, the
Oh,
cat likes the dog, but the dog doesn't like the cat. So it's a sad, it's an unrequited love situation.
yeah. But as long as it works,
Yeah, I mean they don't hurt each other. The
they just
the
don't like
cat
it.
constantly is catching like mice around here and stuff.
Oh,
So the dog has nothing to worry about, but the mice definitely do. All right, let's see. Okay, great. I'll play here. I'll play like that last big final section, right?
yeah.
Um, and then well, let's make sure it's coming through first. But then if you have any questions about any of the mock-up or anything going in, happy to answer those.
Yeah, I'm listening. All right. What, first of all, for the mock-up, which libraries did you use?
Good question. I think for this one, it's a combination. So I'm using some Marcato uh, samples from Cinematic Studio Strings. Oh no, actually just Cinematic Studio Solo right now, um, and Pacific. So a lot of this is coming. A lot of the string sounds anyway are coming from Pacific. And then so I'm doing basically my orchestration on this piece is very loosely based around like Avengers Endgame. And it's the same for the Sea Lion track as well. Um, and so in that capacity, what I have is I have these big brass chords going on. Let's see, let's start here. And so I've got the brass basically picking up these big chords, and I'm using these inversions to my advantage, um, to where I'm basically doing first, fifth, tenth inversions. And so I don't even know if that's a phrasing, isn't it? It's not an inversion. Um, but but basically, I'm following the harmonic series with the way that I'm writing the chords, which is one of the reasons that I'm able to make those chords sound so rich. And so it's kind of there's this big series by Leonard Bernstein where he does this like lecture series at Harvard. And he talks about how so much of music really comes from fundamentally the understanding of the harmonic series. Um, and so he does this thing where he talks about um, mom being the first word of most people, um, and how the word mom came about, and how it's basically the same in most languages, ma, right? There's most languages have some form of just calling your mom mom, right? And he talks about how ah, which is basically a third, and how this is a very um, it's a very like pleasing interval to the human ear. And so from a very early time in human history, we've kind of been cued into this harmonic series just from the fact of certain things sound really pleasing and certain things don't. And so as a kid, you're going, ah, ma, ma. And so it sort of turns into this thing. So one of the things that I'm really bringing into my music, I'm a big fan of classical orchestration. I love studying the greats. But at the same time, I don't have orchestras fully at my disposal. I wish I did. I mean, obviously with this project I recorded with an orchestra, and I'm very happy about that. But I can't just like send my ideas to an orchestra. Like uh let's say Alfred Newman or somebody like that. They had an orchestra just hired on the Warner Brothers lot that they could like pen an idea and then they could go down to the orchestra on the scoring stage and be like, "Hey, would you play this for me? I'd just like to see something." And so what I was tasked with, at least in my own mind, was finding a way of giving myself that. And the way that I've done that is by creating this crazy kind of like template where all of this is kind of an orchestra in a box that I can use, a group of players who I can say, "Hey, would you try this?" And ultimately, what I've come down to is that more or less, when you follow the harmonic series, it sounds phenomenal. And when you don't, it doesn't, which can be utilized. And so, like when you're doing atonal music, when you're doing weird kind of stuff, yeah, throw the harmonic series out the window. There's really fun and interesting ways to doing to fun and interesting reasons to do that. But let's say you're making brass chords. Let's see. I honestly can't even remember what key this whole thing is in. I believe that's a B flat chord. I mean, I'm really not doing anything insane here. B flat, B flat, F, D.
Yeah,
It's just first, fifth, tenth with a double octave on the bottom for some oomph.
yeah,
That's the whole thing. Um, and then every single chord that I'm doing is following maybe that kind of structure. There might be times where I have the third in the bass. There might be times where I have the fifth in the bass. I think this chord is fifth in the bass. Yep. And so, I'm sticking with that first, fifth, tenth kind of inversion thing, but I am changing how I'm stacking things in order to get kind of the best sound for the moment. And also, fifth on the bottom sounds triumphant as crap. And so you get this like, you know, right, it feels so good. So there's a
yeah,
couple of kind of moving parts here. Basically, I'm trying to keep in mind the harmonic series most of the time. Um, but then I'm trying to have fun and be creative. And so like there's this balance of kind of the sciency aspect of it, of like literally there is I mean, so many people would kind of hate me for saying this, but I mean, there's like a science to making good music. There's a formula. You know what? At least to orchestration. Maybe I should say it like that. Um, but uh, but then there's this other aspect of it, which is just the like fly by the seat of your pants, do things that make you happy, like get inspired, like give yourself goosebumps, like, like those kind of things. And so I
yeah,
think that the really great stuff happens, like John Williams, or, I think of Tchaikovsky or music like this. I think the really great stuff happens when like the goosebumps meet science, where it's like there's like this craft, there's like this perfection in the craft, but there's also this like free creativity of just saying like I'm gonna try crap. I'm gonna do weird, interesting, different little things. Um, and so yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole point of what I was trying to do is like let's have fun. Like I just wanted to like let's go crazy. Let's like but then you pay attention to the science of the stuff as well, right? I mean, you pay
Yeah.
attention to,
It has to be
making
like
things sound good.
equilibrium.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Um, what was it? I think I think the horn, or no, what was it? At the beginning, you showed me something, and it's alone. It sounded horrible.
Was it the violin?
I think so.
Is
I don't know how. Yeah. What the heck?
Well, here's the deal is that I mean I'm just doing a very classic orchestrating trick, which is first violins on a high octave and second violins on a lower octave. And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden you kind of lose that high octave, don't you? Like you're not hearing it, but you're not hearing it. And
Yeah.
so all it is now is it's just sparkle on top of everything. It's which is really, really nice. Like you get let me see if I can get the live orchestra on this, and you'll be able to hear hopefully everything. Um, so one of the things that I listen for a lot is like the sizzle of the strings. And there's this sound that strings make that I find incredibly pleasing, and it like scratches the inside of my brain. Um, and it's like,
Yeah.
and um, and I love it. It's not inherent to strings all the time, but you can orchestrate in such a way that it's there. And so also with this particular arrangement, which is so busy and there's so much stuff going on, your biggest issue in an arrangement like this is how how are things going to be heard?
Yeah.
Like how am I going to make sure that you can hear all of the parts okay? And a lot of people are going to think, "Oh, that's a mixing issue." Right? So you're going to write it all and then you're going to mix it so that you can hear everything. No, it's an arrangement issue first. And so basically, you're arranging in such a way that you're already happy. And so I have one rule that I really like to live by, at least while I'm working, which is make future Blair happy. So if the Blair sitting at that piano writes a really darn good tune, then mock-up Blair is going to be happy. Mock-up arrangement Blair is going to be happy. Then if mock-up arrangement Blair does a fantastic job of creating an arrangement that's engaging and exciting and it you can hear all the parts really well, then mixing Blair is going to be incredibly happy. And so because if I do a good job at every individual stage of the process, then the next process is just joy. I just get
Mhm.
to enjoy mixing the thing, right? I just get, it's
Yeah.
like, ooh, this is already good. So what can I do to make it better? As opposed to what can I do to fix crap? Which is
That's true.
that's never a fun way to work. It's like every single stage of the process is just trying to fix what you did in the last in the last stage. So instead it's more along the lines of like okay, every part of the process needs to be incredible. A chef, Marco Pierre White, um, says perfection is a lot of little things done very well,
Yeah.
and that's the approach that I tend to take with music. And I certainly don't hit it. I mean, there's arrangements on this EP where I'm like, oh, I don't like that as much. And there's ones where I mean, especially this track where I'm like, man, I friggin' love this. This is so much fun. I have a great time with this one. Um, but regardless of the process, um, what the goal is with every individual thing, with every chord, with every movement of the melody, uh, just do that well. Whatever little work that I have in front of me, do that portion well.
Mhm.
And I think someday I will get to the point where I write my ET or something like that, which is like that turned out just about as close to perfect as I think I can get it. And so, yeah, but in the meantime, I'm just working, 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 just trying to get there.
Quick question. What is
Yeah,
an
go for it.
ET?
Say again.
What is an ET?
Oh, ET, extraterrestrial. It's ET, like John Williams' score for ET.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay. So,
like da 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 da.
yeah.
So
Okay,
it's
I
his
understand now. I
masterpiece.
was like, I thought,
Yeah, I'm using idiomatic language. Yeah, so it's like someday I will write my masterpiece that
yeah,
is as close to perfect as I can get it. No,
yeah.
thank you for jumping on that because that's confusing wording. Um,
Yeah, I
and so
was
yeah,
like, what?
someday I will write something that's like, oh man, that's about as close to perfect as I can get. But I think that in the meantime, the way that you get there is not by trying to make something perfect.
Mhm.
You just try and make every little decision as best as you can.
Yeah,
And then at the end of the thing, you look at it and you're like, I can't really find anything wrong with that.
yeah,
And the reason that you can't find anything wrong with that is because you did a really good job at a, a million small decisions,
yeah.
right? And so, I mean,
That's
that's
true.
that's what good work is, I think, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And in this case, you made a lot of good decisions
I hope.
for the track. What really is interesting to me right now, because when I compose, um, what I find hardest is the percussions.
Hmm.
When do I put the percussions, which kind? And I don't really have a library for percussions. So I'm
Hmm.
basically taking whatever I have and trying to use that.
Yep.
But can we take a closer look to how
Absolutely.
you implemented them?
Yeah. Let me bring up. Um, let's just take a look at this percussion here for this bigger section. So the common wisdom with composing, and I don't disagree and I don't agree, but the common wisdom with composing is write all of your melodic instruments and then pepper in your percussion. Now,
Mhm.
that doesn't work for something like this. And the reason for that is because this is so much more like a band arrangement, and I mean like a rock band arrangement, where the percussion is like almost a leading voice in what's
Yeah.
happening, right? So for this one, I mean, take a listen to the entire thing again. Um, for this one, the orchestra is live, but the percussion is not. The percussion is completely sampled, every single bit, all 100% sampled. So the so the thing about this one, like I said, is that we're approaching it more like a rock band than like I'm not writing Duel of the Fates here, or like it's not an extremely orchestral work, although I'm utilizing the orchestra. Um, and so and I hope to utilize the orchestra well enough that that somebody like John Williams would look at my orchestration and be like, "Yeah, that's super solid." But at the same time, John Williams would never write something like this. You know what I mean? Maybe he would. I mean, he could, but I
Good.
don't think he would.
Yeah.
Like, and so, um, and so I'm really starting. Well, I can show you the piano sketch here. Um, I'm starting with a piano sketch, and I have no idea what this piano sketch even is. It might not even be any good at all. Let's see. Oh, literally just melody. So I all I gave myself there was melody. Let's see if I
Mhm.
gave myself anything else for the first chorus. Nope. Yeah, so it's like I obviously had like an idea in my mind. I used the piano sketch here to kind of this is like I knew that I needed to write 2 minutes. That was what contractually I was obligated to write. And I think the track ended up being 2 minutes and 5 seconds long, which I did not charge them extra for. but but so I was like, okay, this is about what I want to write. This is more or less what it is. Um, I believe that when I started mocking things up, um, this percussion and brass, low brass, was probably kind of where I started. Um, so let
You
me.
started with the end.
A lot of people would think so, but the reason that I wouldn't call it that is it's the rock band pyramid, right? So like um, when you're recording non-traditional music, when you're recording, I don't know what you want to call it, pop music, rock music, whatever. You tend to start by layering drums and bass, and that's the bottom of your pyramid.
Mhm.
Drums and bass. Then above that, you have melodic instruments or at least harmonic instruments, keyboards, guitars, things like that. And then you have your melodic instruments, which is, your voices or guitar solos and so on and so forth. Um, and so different types of arranging are going to require different approaches. And so for this one in particular, because it's more of a because it's more of like a rock band-ish kind of thing, um, I approached it more like the pyramid than I did like an orchestral work where if I was writing something and in the last month or so I've written things like this uh, where it's completely the harmonic and melodic instruments, and I'm writing it like a John Williams thing, a Danny Elfman thing, a Tchaikovsky thing, whatever. Um, like, uh, and then at the very end, you've got timpani going dugga dum boom, and you've got like a cymbal swell going whoosh, and
Yeah.
you add those things at the last step of the process. So, yes, there are moments to do that. This in particular was not one of those moments because uh, this is kind of a nebulous construct, especially for a lot of classical musicians. Um, but uh, but the groove was so important for this particular track. And so you can hear even without any of the melodic instruments here that this track grooves, right? Like that kind of gives you like stank face a little bit. Like you can hear that like and a drummer like just a straight up like rock drummer would be happy to play a beat like this,
Yeah.
you know. And the whole reason for that is because I wanted to approach it like something a little bit more modern, right? And so that's one of the things that really interests me as far as arranging is not rehashing what's been done. I mean, look, I could write every day for the rest of my life and never write anything like John Williams wrote. Or I could write every day of the rest of my life like Blair would write. and and
Think
I
that's
could
something
succeed at
that
that
Blair would
every
write.
single day. And so I think there are ways where you set yourself up for failure if your entire life is based around trying to sound like your greatest idol,
Hmm.
as opposed to this. Like I I love like I love grooves, and I wish orchestras grooved more often. And actually, the leader of the orchestra commented this when we were recording live, and he was like, "Those hits are super cool. The bum bum bum. Those real, and it's just a really weird thing to do with the orchestra. But it ended up being so interesting and just fun, and it's kind of one of the things that, especially when like music people listen to this kind of EP that I made, they glom onto that. Here, let me. I want to not talk generally. I want to at least show you a few things that are going on inside of this folder here. Um, Okay, so I'm just opening up right now the percussion high folder.
Mhm.
And there are a
Okay,
few
that's
things that are less important, so like some little tambo, things like that. Cymbals, most people know what cymbals do. The things that are probably a little bit more important to this are, first of all, uh, these. So I've got some just general high percussion that's this coming from HZP Hans Zimmer percussion, um, and uh, and then I have some bamboo clacks. I think those are coming from an 8dio library. Some bongos, 8dio library, and then I'll talk about these hands and clocks in a second. So I'll let you hear those. And so the general rule of thumb about um, uh, producing and arranging percussion like this is that the lower you go, the less you do, and the higher you go, the more you do. And I mean frequency wise, right?
Mhm.
So the higher up the frequency is, basically, I mean, just again from a harmonic series perspective, from a purely kind of scientific perspective, um, the higher you go, the quicker the sound dies out. And
Yeah.
so, whereas you're talking about, I mean, it, if you hit an A 440, um, and that's 440 hertz, that wave is a lot longer than if you're playing something in the 5K range, you know, and so you're able to fit a lot more harmonic content up high than you are down low, which is why arrangements tend to be very simple in the bass. I mean, you listen to I mean, what I have on the screen right behind me, and I know you can't quite see it, but it's Leaving Hogwarts by John Williams, and he uses pedal tones so much in that, and so even with the best of the best arrangers, the bass tends to be simple, and what's up top, what's ornate, what's decorative is is a lot more complex, right? And
Yeah.
so here's the high stuff, at least what's holding down the fort on the high stuff. Let me go like one thing at a time. And then all three together. So you can see how these different elements working together, they're all taking slightly different roles, but when you start putting them together, it creates a motor. And
Yeah.
that motor, a lot of times, um, the motor in music, especially, I mean, let's talk about John Williams again, Duel of the Fates. That's the motor, and
Mhm.
so all you're thinking of is you're thinking in terms of these elements that build up your music. You've got melody, you've got your rhythm. And so your rhythm can be da 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 da, or it can be saka da da ka da 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 ka da da da, right? And this one is definitely a little bit more of like a classic drum rhythm kind of thing. Um, then there's one other thing that I want to talk about here, which is the clocks. Um, Now a lot of people might be like, "Oh, I don't want to like this isn't Inception. I don't want to put clocks in my work." But here's the thing: is you'll hear a difference here. I'll play you what these clocks are doing. It doesn't sound like that much, right?
Not at
Um,
all.
but what it's helping to do, and you'll hear the difference here, at least hopefully you will. When I highlight this, it just helps that percussion. It's helping that high end come through just a little bit. So it's not even something that I'm wanting to have in terms of it's doing something really musically necessary. It's more frequency, right? So
Mhm.
I tend to think of music as a cross, right? Which is that on the up and down you have frequency, on the side to side you have time, right? When the music is well balanced over frequency, it sounds sonically pleasing. When the music is well balanced over time, you have a good arrangement.
Yeah.
So without
Yes.
it, with it, it's so funny because you wouldn't even like listen to it and be like, oh, there's clocks there. It's just doing something. And I'd venture to say, I hope that this comes through. I think even when I play the entire full mix, you'll be able to just pick that out just a little bit. I don't know if you can or not, but I can hear it, and
Yeah.
it's just
It's
it's little, but it's little ear candy, right?
and it helps
Um,
a lot. Yes.
it does, it just helps there to be I mean, it's thinking of that cross, right? So it's
Yeah.
thinking of that the music is filling up the frequency spectrum in a pleasing way.
Yeah.
Nothing's too localized in one area. We're spreading things out. Let me
Yeah.
show you the low percussion here real quick. This one is, I think, it's just much easier on the low percussion. I think it's just a couple of little things.
Mhm.
A genius certainly did not write that part. I promise you that. So I mean, but the thought is that just like leaving Hogwarts right here, the base is simple so that what's above it can be complicated, right? If your base is there are moments for that. There totally are, but they kind of have to be sparse,
Yeah.
because it gets really overwhelming for your ear. But this your ear can listen to for a lot longer. Because, like I said, it's really sonically balanced. Like, my goal is that, if you were to I was saying the cross thing, right? But if you were to treat that cross like an XY graph, and then you were to take all of the notes in my piece, both on the X and the Y, and you were to average them out, that dot would end up somewhere around the middle.
Yeah.
So basically, there's balance in the piece. Um,
Yeah.
and then
Most
the only other
definitely.
fun thing here is uh, is just this little 808 kick that I have that I'm using to make. The 808 it's really nice for being slightly percussive on the low end, but also being able to put in some sub, and be actually like have harmonic value to it, as opposed to most percussion, which is atonal, right?
Mhm.
You can barely hear it. If there was a sub in here, you would hear dum da ga dum, and so
Yeah.
but it's it's all you're hearing is ta 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 ta. But when you get that sub, and that's one of the things too, is that when you're listening, I'm assuming that you don't have a sub where you're at right now. When you listen, the arrangement works. But then when you put a sub in here, then all of a sudden you feel and it's doing like these big things that are like shaking your chest, and you know, making you your heart have palpitations. So yeah, I mean that's basically the percussion. And any clarifying questions, I'm happy to answer.
First of all, so well made.
Thank
And
you.
with the little the clock that you added, it's basically like basically you copied another percussion for the clock, right? So
I
it,
think so.
yeah, because it I think it must be because then it adds the very high
Yeah, it's the
frequency
attack.
to it.
Yes. And so a lot of times that's what I'll be doing is I'll take that clock and you know, for example, I wonder if I did that actually at all with the low percussion or not. No, I don't think I did. But a lot of times, like let's say on a track, I just have low percussion going boom baka boom, and it's having trouble cutting through. Then what I might do is I might put a clock on top of that so that it's more like ta ta ka ta.
Mhm.
And so you have these little itty bitties, and it doesn't have to be a clock. I mean, you could literally make little recordings in your own house of clicking things or the important part is not that it's a clock. The important part is that this big percussion is a little bit set back into the space and it's huge and it's bassy.
Mhm.
And then, so what you need is you need something that feels closer to your ears. You need something that's up front. And so the combination of whoa, 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 big percussion sound with and when you combine those things, you get something that sounds super massive. You get something that sounds huge because somehow it sounds huge and far away and also in your ear at the same time.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it's a great little trick, and I learned that from Stephen Barton as well. And I'm sure Stephen learned that from like Harry Gregson Williams or Hans or whoever he was interning or assisting for at the time. But
yeah,
I don't mean to take that. Maybe Stephen made that up on his own. But there's a long lineage of kind of passing this sort of information down from person to person when you're doing this kind of work.
definitely. I think in some course, I'm not sure who said it, or maybe in a YouTube tutorial, which might not be the best source, but someone recommended if you have something that's a deep sound and it doesn't really get through when you're thinking of normal speakers like on the tablet right here,
Hmm.
iPad, it doesn't have a sub or anything. You can't hear the lower frequencies so
Uh-huh.
well. So, but if you want to make them more audible, you basically you can distort them a little, so that adds more frequencies, higher frequencies, and then you can hear it better if you don't have
Absolutely.
a audio that's very high quality.
Yeah. Well, and so what distortion is you're adding content. And I'll use that. It's one of the only EQ tricks that you have that is additive. And
Hmm.
so, and what I mean by that, a lot of people would be like, well, Blair, I can just take the EQ and I can boost, you know, 4K by 3 dB. That's true, but you're not adding anything to that signal. You're
Sure.
just boosting what's already there.
Hmm.
And so, so distortion in a lot of ways, it's like spices, right? You're not, you know, like you're putting extra on what you're doing.
Yeah.
I have this library, Cinematic Studio Strings, which is really, really good, but the mix on it isn't incredible, and I find it a little bit difficult to work with in some ways. And so what's missing a lot is the top end. And so what I've done is a very similar trick to what you're saying is I've taken a saturator. So I've used Saturn 2 by Fab Filter, which I really like. So I love Saturn. It's a great way to add distortion. Um, and so what you do when you have like a sample library or something where the top end has been scrubbed off, you can literally just distort the top end. And you don't want to do it so that it sounds like, metal music or something like that, but you want to do it so that it adds some of the content back in. It's basically an exciter. That's what an exciter does. Is an exciter adds top end back in by ways of harmonic distortion. And so you can actually use that exact same technique, but just using a high quality distortion plugin, or in this case, a saturator plugin. And so that's a great way to use it as well. And what I'll do a lot of the times is I might saturate an entire mix. Well, I'm not. I might. I generally always do. But how I'll saturate an entire mix is through running it through a tape emulator, which functionally
Okay.
does basically the exact same thing. I mean, that's what tape emulation is it's saturation. And saturation a lot of the time is kind of a little bit of the secret sauce of making a great mix. And how I learned this is I took an online course from Dennis Sands once, who mixed Avengers Endgame, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Um, and I was so amazed. I was so amazed because he did an entire mix for on this mock-up, and the mix sounded so good. I'm not kidding. It just sounded so fantastic. There must have been 100, 200 tracks, and he used saturation or some variation thereof on every single track. And I'm not kidding. He used EQ on like 10 tracks. And I mean, it's a little bit crazy. And I
Yeah.
I think the reason that works is one, you're you're adding you're adding harmonic material. It's almost like using, I mean, everybody's using these plugins now, and I use them too. They're great. Like Soothe or Gullfoss. I don't know if you've heard of either of those, but they're great plugins, and they kind of like they kind of mix your music for you in a way. They don't, but in a way they kind of like take out some harsher frequencies and stuff like that. And so my kind of thoughts are like saturation is kind of the OG Soothe. Is basically it's doing two things. It's boosting really pleasant frequencies, especially when you're using like tape emulators and stuff like that. It's boosting frequencies that we find to be really pleasant. It's taking out really harsh sibilant frequencies, and also it's rounding out bass. And so it does kind of this EQ thing to your mix, whilst also you're not doing any EQing at all. And
Mhm.
so it's adding some material that's very, very pleasant sounding, while also it kind of makes the whole mixing process a little bit easier. It's really weird. I'm glad you touched on it because it's like I said, it's a trick that like the best of the best are using. It's just saturating things like crazy, and not over relying on EQ, which is very interesting.
Definitely. That's it's like personally, I EQ so much.
Yeah.
I
Well,
EQ everything.
totally. And I think the the reality is, and I don't know exactly what type of music you're working on. Maybe it's like if it's like orchestral music like this. Um,
Yeah, I want to get like trailer music.
nice, great. Yeah, and this kind of stuff, this is very trailery. This like penny series movie stuff. I mean, this is like,
Yeah, a lot
this
of
is
power.
huge. Yeah, it's a lot of power, exactly. Um, and so uh with that, yeah, I mean EQ, it plays a role. I mean, I have, like on my Pacific strings here or something like that, you can see that like, I have EQ going, and it's actually a fairly intense EQ. I'm boosting some high frequencies, I'm taking out some harshness, I'm taking out some mud. Um, oh, oops. And I'm accidentally playing it. Um, and but the thing is that like a lot of this stuff is then coming through saturators. It's coming through true iron, which is a like a transistor saturator, and then it's coming through a tape saturator on Saturn II as well. And so, like a lot of EQ that I'm doing tends to be subtractive, where
Mhm.
I'm getting rid of things that I don't want. And then when I'm adding things in, I'm trying to do that in a way that is pleasing to the ear. And so the thing is it let's say if you boost something by let's for my strings, if I'm like, oh, there's not a lot of high end in my strings. Well, what would most people then go do? They would go to the EQ and they would boost the high end on their strings. I mean that, and in a way, that's sensical. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's a wrong thing to do, but I am saying maybe there's a better option because when you take those frequencies and you boost them by 6 dB, those high frequencies that you're missing, you might get some of those back, but also you're introducing unpleasantness with those high frequencies as well because you're just taking all of the high content that exists in those strings and you're boosting it by 6 dB.
Yeah.
And so you get good stuff and you get bad stuff. Whereas if you use this technique that I'm talking about, using a saturator, um, you tend to only get good stuff. Like if you're using, for like what I'm using, like a clean tape, and I know that it sounds pleasing, and I know what tape sounds like. It sounds really nice. Um, and so I'm kind of using that to my advantage. And when I boost things, a lot of the time, and I'm not going to say always, because sometimes you're talking about something that's sitting in the back of the mix, and you just want to boost 4K real quick, and then you're done with it. Like, yeah, okay, great. Like, I don't want to be dogmatic about it, but there are a lot of moments here where you can use this saturation technique to boost things in a mix, and it sounds so much more pleasing than going like this with your EQ, where some things are going super up, some things are getting carved out. And so different tools for different jobs is basically what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Most definitely something to look into when you want to improve your own music for everyone who's listening, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just incredible. I really like the song, and I actually some things are like fun to recreate because as of right now I am beginning and I don't have a lot of libraries, so my music sounds bad in my opinion, and probably objectively also sounds bad, but you know, um I'm trying to recreate something right now, and this is also something maybe in the future that I will recreate. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that would be amazing.